Welcome everyone. So I today was going to talk about guns. Yeah, it's kind of interesting what I've learned. So, I mean, I did know this already, but I guess it just kind of reminded me that, people talk about all the time how, oh, by the way, don't you love my little avocado piggy pad here? Look at the back. So cute. Yeah. Anyway, people talk about all the time, football and how it affects the brain. And, you hear it over and over again. But just recently, been starting to read more and hear more about the effects of shooting guns inside of a, I guess, target practice, like inside of a range where you shoot guns, like indoors. And cute turtle. And how that affects the brain. And there's I guess 2 ways that it affects the brain. So what I read says that, every day thousands of people use indoor gun ranges that, and it's designed to limit the hazards of target shooting, including lead exposure and stray bullets, whatever. But shooting indoors is not good, is what they're saying, because it leads to exposure, stray bullets, lead. But shooting indoors is not good, because what's overlooked, I guess, is concussive blast waves that can damage the brain. So they're saying there's evidence that firing military weapons can damage brain cells, and repeated exposure can cause permanent injuries. But I guess there's no public information really to kind of strengthen, what they're saying about the blast waves that are delivered by civilian firearms as a potential hazard. So I guess some people have been doing their own testing and getting their own data and measuring the blast, at some popular civilian gun ranges, indoor ranges, using the same sensors that the military uses to see. I don't think I want to take him out of here yet. Let's work on just getting these out for now. So reporters have been measuring the reporters that have been working on this have been measuring the blasts of at these gun ranges to see how they're affecting what their data is saying. And I guess the data showed that some large caliber civilian rifles delivered a blast wave that goes and exceeds beyond what the military says is safe for the brain, and firing smaller caliber guns repeatedly could quickly exponentially add up to a potentially harmful exposure. And I guess their data was also showing indoor shooting ranges designed to make shooting safe inadvertently make blast exposure worse, doubling and sometimes tripling the blast. They are saying each time a gun is fired, a supersonic pressure wave surges from the muzzle back toward the person pulling the trigger. And the sensors measured the pressure of the blast wave hitting the body in pounds per square inch, or PSI. And it was really high. So they're saying the brain is a delicate it's a delicate network of about 100 trillion connections with consistency close to Jello, and how blasts affect that network is really poorly understood. But experts don't know yet what the level of the blast what that blast can damage, what level of that blast can damage the tissue, or whether the blasts that are safe, what is how safe it is in limited numbers until it causes harm after repeated exposure. So there's just so much unknown. So like they're just saying, just limit your exposure as much as possible and try not well, it's just saying basically try not to shoot indoors. Do the opposite. Shoot outdoors. Like there's thousands of indoor ranges though in the United States. And I guess they have like, I've never been in one, but I guess they're saying they have like, basically all of them have like a similar layout. Like a row of lanes separated by bullet resistant walls and like soft shock absorbent paneling, and it's not standard, but without it, like the booth can act like kind of like an echo chamber, like reflecting more of the blast waves back towards the shooter. I guess the initial blast wave from firing a pistol takes about 2.5 milliseconds to pass through the shooter's body. And they're saying as the waves surge through the brain tissue, they kind of bounce off surfaces like the back of the skull. And if the blast waves are strong enough, neurons can like fray and break. Let's see. So like they're just saying there's like this potential for harm from the blast waves gets almost no attention from the shooting public, even though people can experience like concussion-like symptoms after a day at the range. One day. It's like one of those unspoken things they say. You don't realize that after a whole day of shooting, you have that ringing in your ears and that headache. And each blast creates like waves of rapidly changing and high and low pressure. And the power of the blast is like typically measured by recording like the peak pressure of like the biggest wave. And so I guess the U.S. military is like saying that any blast wave that peaks like below 4 psi is safe, though like that guideline is not based on solid evidence, and after research and everything is probably going to change. So I guess more of investigating into this, like they found out that the booth walls doubled the peak pressure of many of the guns compared with shooting in like the open. With like a .357 revolver, the peak pressure tripled. And they're saying like the design of the semi-automatic pistol directs most of the blast forward, limiting exposure to the shooter. And then the shotgun's long barrel puts more distance between the shooter and the source of the blast. And the revolver's barrel and the cylinder directs some of the blast towards the shooter. And they're saying like the AR-15s often have a muzzle device that directs the blast wave laterally, and this sends more of the blast towards the shooter. So they say like the smaller caliber weapons that are tested indoors created a blast that measured 1.3 psi on average, far below the military's 4 psi safety threshold, but one gun far exceeded the military's safe zone. A 50 caliber rifle, one of the most powerful guns on the market, which shoots like a thumb-sized high velocity projectile originally designed to pierce vehicle armor, and it measured 7.6 psi on average when fired from a prone position. So the rifle's like supersonic blast wave hits the shooter's head in a fraction of the time that it takes to blink. But using a high-speed camera, the reporters were able to capture it. So basically that blast wave hits that head, hits the brain. So I guess science has not determined yet how big a blast has to be before it damages brain cells, or whether repeated small exposures, cause microscopic damage to pile up unnoticed over time. But came off. I guess small exposures may cause damage that accumulates unnoticed, like repeated small exposures. Like a rubber band. Okay, so you stretch a rubber band 100 times and it bounces back, but there are micro tears forming in that rubber band. The 101st time it breaks. So the potential, for harm from the blast is so poorly understood that even the military's official safety threshold of 4 psi is not based on real evidence. It's only a placeholder, borrowed from decades-old guidelines for eardrum injuries. The military just uses it and doesn't have the data yet to arrive at, evidence-based numbers for the damage to the brain. I mean, the actual brain tissue damage may be much lower than 4 psi. And the military for Canada puts it at 3. And then I guess the Army found some symptoms of brain injury in grenade range instructors who were exposed to hundreds of blasts that measured less than 1 psi. So, it's just not clear how low the injury threshold might go. It's not even clear that measuring peak pressure is the best way to gauge the risk. So the current military safety guideline looks at, only at blast waves' highest overpressure peak, but the blast waves have dozens of peaks that can pulse through the brain in a few milliseconds. So Army researchers, they believe that it may be just as important to calculate the total area of all those peaks and measurements known as positive impulse and then add it up. And those measurements for every blast a person is exposed to in a day. And they found that soldiers who were repeatedly exposed over a day, of training to a number of blasts that measured around 4 psi, were likely to show signs of slow cognitive function. And it's just a possible indicator of brain injury. So cumulative positive impulse of those blasts added up to 31.7 psi, milliseconds or more. In other words, multiple blasts within safe levels appeared to add up, and the overall exposure was not safe. So I guess they're now considering using a cumulative positive impulse exposure of 31.7 psi. So they're just saying that they basically, researchers are saying they don't have a lot of answers here, but cumulative effects of months or years of, firing rifles. And what does that mean? What kind of brain damage is happening? Oops. So I guess there's these online forums for, people who regularly shoot guns, and they're saying that they're having these regular concussion-like symptoms, but talk about the risk of brain injury is rare. Post-shooting symptoms like, headaches, fatigue, brain fog that are related to brain injury are often attributed to noise, tight-fitting protective gear, dehydration, poor ventilation, stuff like that. And one person may feel fine after shooting, another may feel concussed because not everyone is affected the same way. Age, fitness level, prior history of contact sports, pre-existing brain injuries, other factors that people are more vulnerable to than other people. But bottom line, neurologists say that if you're feeling ill effects from shooting, limit your exposure. And there's ways to do that. Open outdoor settings rather than an enclosed booth. That'll cut the blast waves by more than half. You forget about that. The ammunition is made with lead, so you're touching all of that. You're getting lead exposure. Think about that stuff too. I mean, it's just like anything, with risk. You want to limit alcohol. You want to limit alcohol. You want to not smoke. I have this tagline I usually go by: don't smoke, don't drink, wear zinc. Yeah. Wear a zinc, people. Zinc. So important. I don't care if you look like Casper the Friendly Ghost. So important to wear zinc for sunscreen. Anyway, just wanted to share what I learned, and thanks for listening. Basically got all the good stuff out of there. We'll work on the backside next time. Bye for now.